Hi, Betty. It's so nice to meet you today. Lou has been very enthusiastic, waiting for us to get to know each other a little bit. Do you want to start out by introducing yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Betty Guadagno. I'm dialing in from Brooklyn, New York. I'm really grateful to be here. And it's always so inspiring to think that anybody would want to listen to me talk or find hope and inspiration in my story. So I'm really grateful to be here. I'll just share a little brief overview of my transformation and how I live a satisfying life today. I started off on my spiritual journey around 4 years ago. I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, and it transformed my life 180 degrees. I went from an atheist, a drug addict, a prostitute, to being a believer in long-term recovery and working as a recovery coach, being of service to other people and to the communities that I belong to. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to share some pieces of myself with you here today.
Well, it's wonderful to hear about a story when someone's changed so much and had such a radical transformation, like you said, 180 degrees. So do you want to go back and tell us sort of before the transformation, a little bit more what life was like and maybe how you got onto that path?
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up in a really chaotic, dysfunctional home. My whole family is a perpetual cycle of poverty and addiction, sexual trauma, abuse. And it's just been that way for generations and generations. And it is a big undertaking to be the one to break all the generational curses, but I guess that's what I'm doing. And in 2007, my parents, they were both active addicts. My parents taught me how to use, their parents taught them how to use. It's just a learned behavior in our family because there's a lot of sexual trauma that goes on throughout everyone's life. So yeah, you're just taught at a very young age to use. And in 2007, my parents, who were both actively using, had hit a new bottom in their addiction, and they made a decision to stop using drugs. And they did that by committing suicide with one another.
Oh,
Yeah, I was 23 when that happened. My sister was 18. We found them. And yeah, it was just such a traumatic, debilitating loss, you know? And, it's like hard to remember what my life was like before that. That really felt like the beginning of this other life that I was living. So, before that loss, I mean, I was already an addict before that, but, this loss gave me this great excuse to use, like I have to use drugs. How am I supposed to cope with what's going on in my life? And I had felt like a victim my whole life up until this moment and including this moment. I had always felt victimized by the world, by my circumstance, by just every and anything possible. And in this moment, of this traumatic loss happening in my life, I decided that I was no longer going to be the victim, that I was going to be the perpetrator in people's stories because I couldn't take any more pain on myself. And so I made a decision to start inflicting pain on other people. And there's a saying, hurt people hurt people. And that was definitely what my experience was, becoming. And so I just used drugs. I didn't know how to cope. I abandoned my sister. I didn't know how to take care of someone. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I abandoned everything in my life. And I just kept floating through my existence, avoiding pain, avoiding grief, avoiding responsibility. And yeah, I just continued to use for over 20 years. I used drugs, and I had the last couple of years of my active addiction were like especially dark. It seems like my life evaporated in one moment, but really it was 20 years in the making. But the last couple of years of my active addiction were just, I became such a shell of a person. I was really immersed in sex work. I couldn't hold a job anymore. It was the only way that I could make money. I hadn't paid my rent in 2 years because buying drugs was just more important. I was on the verge of homelessness. And, I was in a state of constant desperation. That's what my life felt like. And I became like a dumpster for drugs. I was using any and everything that I could get my hands on because I just could not cope with my experience, especially how rapidly it was descending. And, I started doing drugs that I swore I would never touch again. I started smoking methamphetamine, which is a drug that I hadn't touched in 15 years. And if you don't have any experience with that drug, I'm happy for you. It was invented in Nazi Germany and Hitler was on meth. So it'll give you like a little scope of what it's like. It's genocidal. It is insanity. And my years on that drug, my life evaporated and who I was as a person just completely disappeared. Like I was no longer a human. I was an animal. And I ended up overdosing in March of 2019. And I had this experience. And the best way that I can describe it now that I have some language for it is it was like a near death-like experience. I didn't actually die, but I found myself in the space of heaven. And I was in this non-physical realm, enveloped in unconditional love and blinding white light, meeting a creator that I did not believe in. And, you know, when I entered this space, I was a devout militant atheist, you know, not only because of all the things that had already happened to me in my life that I didn't want to believe in God, but there was no space for God in my life because drugs were my higher power. Drugs were my whole life, you know. I can't really explain. There's really no language for me to explain to you like the kind of person that I was on drugs, but it's not the person that's sitting here today. So I enter this space and I just think like, whoa, I'm so high that I think I'm talking to God. This is crazy. You know, I was like, I'm never going to be this messed up ever again. And so the experience lasted about 7 to 8 hours. And it was a full body transformation. So again, some of the language that I've been able to find over the years of my integration process, I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. And Kundalini energy is described as life force energy. In the Western world, people call it receiving the Holy Spirit. And so I had this complete opening of all of my chakras. And so I had this massive energy running up and down my spine, opening up all of these centers in my body that had never been awoken before. And as my crown and my third eye opened, it felt like my soul shot out of my body and into eternity. And I was greeted with loved ones that had passed over, and they guided me into this space. And I just felt like I was home, and I couldn't even really remember my human life. It really felt like I had woken up from a dream. And I kind of like shook my head and I was like, whoa, that was crazy. And the only thing that I could remember from the dream, this human life, was that my parents had committed suicide. And I couldn't remember anything else, 35 years of life, all condensed into one 3-second trauma. And so when I think about it now, I'm like, wow, I can't believe how much energy I invest in worrying about things. When I wake up in eternity, it's going to be like nothing even happened. Mm-hmm. So while I was in this space, I was taken through my pre-birth planning. So I was shown that I, as a soul, had chosen my life before I had ever come into form, before I ever came to earth. I chose my parents. I chose what family line I would be born into, the reasons why. I chose all of the adversity in my life, all the opportunity to overcome that I hadn't gotten to yet. And, in this moment of being downloaded with this belief, I instantly shifted out of my victim mentality. And I rose into my divinity as a co-creator of my experience. Things had no longer happened to me, they had happened for me. Because on some soul level, I had chosen it for the evolvement of myself. And, this wasn't really making a lot of sense to me, but it felt so good and it felt so real. And it really felt like love and home. And I went through the vibration of every emotion. It wasn't all light and love. There was a lot of darkness that I saw, like on my journey in eternity as well. But the ultimate truth is unconditional love. And that's where I stayed for the majority of my time there. And so as I was shown my pre-birth planning, I said, okay, I get it. This is kind of like a video game and I'm playing this character out on earth and I'm done with the game. I'm not going to finish. I don't want to go back. And they said, well, you have to go back. And I was like, well, no, I'm just not going to. And they said, listen, you are a spiritual soldier and you chose to go to earth because this is the most exciting time to be on earth. There's going to be a major shift in consciousness while you're there. And you're there to assist the collective in awakening from a level of third dimensional thinking to fifth dimensional thinking. And I said, listen, this mission sucks. I am not finishing it. Somebody else can do it. There's plenty of soldiers down there. You don't need me. And they said the first half of your life was like boot camp. And the second half of your life will be carrying out your mission. And it's not going to be nearly as challenging as the first half. All you have to do is just let go of drugs and your mission can take place. And I just didn't know how to do that, you know, and in this space, I was thinking, whoa, I am so high that drugs just broke up with me. You know, all I know is that I took a bunch of drugs and then all of a sudden some voice was telling me to stop taking them. And so I begged, I pleaded to stay there. I transformed into a small child, you know, like I was banging my hands and my feet on the ground. And I said, I will not go back. You cannot make me. I said, I definitely will not go back into her. And I, you know, I could see myself outside of myself. And they said, okay, you don't have to go back into her, but you do have to go back. You signed up to experience certain things and you haven't completed everything. So we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into so that you can complete these lessons. And they likened it to being like in college, like being in school. Like you signed up for a certain major, you haven't finished your classes, so you're going to have to start the semester over. And so I saw this baby that I would be born into, and they showed me her stats, like all of these things about her next to this little baby body. They showed me her gender, her ethnicity, where she would be born, her parents, her adversity, her life's purpose, her mission. And this baby had even deeper levels of hardship than I had already experienced. And I just couldn't imagine starting from zero. And so I threw my figurative hands up in the air and I said, well, okay, I can't do it, not from zero. So I guess I'll go back into her, you know? Wow. And then I found myself back in my awareness. And, you know, I wrote this experience off as drug-induced psychosis because who wouldn't, you know, like it wasn't part of my life. It wasn't part of my picture. And I didn't believe in any of this stuff. And so I just wrote it off and I went about my life. And
I asked you who you were talking to in this, and was it you that was talking, or can you describe that experience a little more in depth?
Sure, yeah. It felt like a collection of people. It felt like people that were definitely in charge of something. So they didn't describe exactly who they were, but again, like just finding language and doing research after the experience, there's some information out in the collective about the Council of Light. Some people call it the Council of Nine. It felt like ascended masters, people in charge of something.
Did you see them or you just heard them?
Everything was non-physical, but there was images in my mind's eye. So yeah, it kind of felt like I was in front of I don't like using this language. I haven't found better language yet though, but it felt like I was in front of a jury. There was like a long table of people. Again, this is all mind's eye, nothing actually physical. But you know, like saying jury kind of sounds condemning, and there is no judgment of condemnation. So like, but it was just a table of people that were in charge, and they were like, listen, your stuff's not finished, you got to go back. So that's what that was like. And yeah, when I came back from this experience, I just continued to use drugs and live my life the way that I was living it. And then the universe stepped in, or I call my higher power source energy, the source of energy that I come from. And source made it completely impossible for me to keep living the way that I was. And these divine synchronicities started to take place in my life. So for instance, all the drug dealers that I had been dealing with for over a decade all simultaneously decided to change their lives and stop selling drugs. Like people that did not know each other, and I had no way to get them anymore. And then drugs just began to not work. And I found myself on day 3 of heroin withdrawal. I had an opiate addiction for over 20 years. And I had been through heroin withdrawal plenty of times before, you know, never more than a day or two. And yeah, you know, I was so sick. I mean, just sicker than I had ever been in 20 plus years of using opiates. And, you know, when you're sick with heroin withdrawal, it feels like your bones are on fire, you're sweating, it's hot and cold, you have a fever, you're sick all over yourself. And I had this thought and I said it out loud and I said, man, I couldn't even kill myself if I wanted to right now because I'm so sick that I can't even get up out of bed to figure out a way to kill myself. And right then I heard a voice and it told me that I could request what I wanted fixed. And I mean, I was in the throes of desperation. So I'm like, okay, I hear some voice, I'll go with it, you know? And so I wrote down on a little Post-it note next to my bed and I said, I want my pain receptors and my neurotransmitters fixed. I want to no longer be physically dependent on heroin. And I was very over intellectual about it, because I didn't say that I wanted to be rid of my drug addiction, because I still wanted to use other drugs. I just didn't want to have the physical withdrawal, the physical dependency to this one substance. And so they told me to lay back and to count down. And as I did, I saw these two little men appear in my mind's eye. They were these little white, bald men with these bulbous noses. They were wearing white lab coats, and they were just standing there staring at me. And then all of a sudden, these little lawnmowers poofed in front of them. And so now they were kind of like jumping up and down, holding on to the lawnmower. And I watched these two little men go in opposite directions and go through every crevice of my mind. And as they went through the crevices of my mind, I felt these intense hot tingles. And that was my healing, my restoration to sanity taking place in this moment. And when they completed their little map of my mind, it felt like a thumb go across my forehead and make X's, and then a palm on my forehead, a plunger on the top of my head, and as it plunged down and came back up, this huge white flash came over me. And in that moment, I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of heroin withdrawal. I mean, like seconds before, I was sick all over myself. Like I couldn't even move. And then all of a sudden I could jump out of bed, and I was screaming hallelujah at the top of my lungs. And I had no idea who I was or what was happening, but I knew that it was something divine, something that I've never conceived that I could experience. And, like my path became crystal clear after that. And because I had listened to this voice in my head tell me about the healing, I started to follow my intuition. I started to really try to pay attention to the voice, but I still had 2 voices in my mind. My addiction was very loud, my ego, and then, like this benevolent, kind voice. And I couldn't really discern between the 2 of them in the beginning. So this voice told me to go onto the New York City subway system and start sermonizing about God being real and God being cool and loving us. And so basically I went out onto the subways evangelizing, and I was, screaming at the top of my lungs, making a fool of myself. And I was telling people, like, don't eat McDonald's, it's poison. We're in a state of ascension. We're all beings of light. And I mean, I really just made such a fool out of myself. And then I found myself on this train, sitting there feeling embarrassed and confused and just lost and broken and battered. I really didn't know what was going on in my life. And this man appeared across from me, and he was wearing a 12-step fellowship necklace. And I heard a voice, and it said, "That's your path. Follow him to a meeting." And that was on June 1st, 2019. And I've been clean ever since. And I went to a few more meetings over the next couple of days, and I just had a thought that I didn't know how to be a person. Like nobody ever taught me how to be a human without using, and nobody ever taught me any positive coping skills or just how to do anything without lying, manipulating, and stealing. And so I'm sitting in this meeting, and there's about 60 people in the room. And I heard a voice, and it told me to turn my head to the right. And I realized that sitting 2 seats away from me was the program director of a long-term treatment facility here in Brooklyn, where I live. And, I just had this thought. I didn't know how to be a person. And I just so happened in a crowd of 60 to be sitting next to a woman whose life's purpose, her passion, her profession is teaching women how to be women again after the use of drugs. And so I knew that it was another divine sign. And I spent the rest of the meeting gathering up my courage so that I could go up to her after the meeting and beg her for help and a bed in her facility. And so the whole meeting, I'm trying to psych myself up, and I'm like, I'm going to have a new life. This is amazing. I can't believe that God is setting me up like so perfectly. And I looked over when the meeting was over, and she was gone. She left early, and I felt totally defeated, but I had a plan. I was going to call the facility. And as I went on the bus to go home, and as I stepped onto the bus, she was sitting right there. She was on the bus. I mean, it was totally divine. She left the meeting early and was somehow on the exact same bus as me, not at the bus stop in front of the meeting, because that's where I was. And I ran up to her totally manic, and I was like, oh my God, I think that you're an angel and you're sent to earth and you're here for me. And I can't believe it. This is totally divine. I wanted to talk to you inside, but you're already gone. And now here you are. And oh my goodness, can you help me? Please, 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 can you help me? And she just looked at me so calm, and she said, yeah, we can help you. We have a bed. Come by tomorrow. And this woman was saying a sentence that was about to change my whole life, And I went there the very next day with just the clothes on my back. I didn't have anything, you know, like I said, I hadn't paid my rent in 2 years. I was about to be homeless any day. And so I just went and I started my new life. And I promise you, like, it really felt like there was some gigantic hand on my back pushing me through the door of that rehab, because I just did not want this. You know, I knew that magical things were happening to get me here, but I just didn't want it, you know, like, because it was just so unfamiliar. And I was so comfortable in my discomfort that you know, probably a little bit of survivor's guilt as well. How do I think that I can recover when my parents never had a chance to? Or, you know, the members of my family that had passed away from the disease of addiction. So I started my journey in this treatment facility. It was a long-term treatment facility. It was 9 to 12 months. I ended up staying there for 17 months. And, you know, this is where I integrated my spiritual experience, and it's where I learned how to be a person. I realized when I got there that I really had no skills. You know, like, I was the kind of addict that I didn't even know how to wake up and brush my teeth without being high first. And so I had to figure all those things out. And, you know, there was a lot of really, it was a very stressful environment. Trying to heal with 25 other women is not pajama parties and pillow fights. It's serious stuff, you know? And there was some rules. I mean, lots of rules. One of them was that you had to ask somebody who had been there longer to go into the refrigerator for you. And I was like, this is a ridiculous rule. I know how to use a refrigerator. But I realized in hindsight that it wasn't about the refrigerator. It was about asking for help. You know, like, I don't know how to do that because I've never done it before. And so I have to ask for help, not only from other people, but from my higher power. You know, I have to check in with source and see if what I'm doing is for my highest good and for the highest good for all. And so that program really got me in the habit of being able to ask for help and just admitting powerlessness over certain things in my life. You know, I am powerless over my addiction, and I'm powerless over people, places, and things. And so that facility gave me the opportunity to go to school. And I went to school. I became a peer advocate. I actually have a job in the recovery field today, which is wild. I can't believe that's a sentence that I can say. You know, in active addiction, I was immersed in sex work, and I pulled other people into that as well. I caused a lot of harm to myself and to other people. And today I have this amazing opportunity to make a universal amends, and I assist women on their healing journeys today. And it's more than I ever could have thought for myself. And thanks to my spiritual programs that I'm a part of, I'm able to say that sentence and not fall apart, you know, because I have some strength in my life today and some spiritual principles that I live my life by. And yeah, you know, so I have a job in the recovery field. I belong to 12-Step Fellowship. It's a spiritual community, and I practice the steps of the program. And I also study the Baha'i faith, and I study A Course in Miracles, which is a metaphysical text channeled by Jesus. It's a reprogramming. And these are all things that came into my awareness when I was in that treatment facility. I had this insatiable thirst for knowledge, and I had nothing but time to sit and learn and read and heal and feel and read some more and learn some more. I didn't have a phone or a computer for 17 months. So all the information I got was out of books. It was totally archaic. I mean, I didn't even realize that you could learn so much from reading books. So yeah, you know, like, I was able to cherry pick the things that I really resonate with and shape my spirituality around it. I read every sacred text. I took the things out of them that I enjoyed, and I practiced them in my life on a daily basis. And my life is immersed in community today. And my life before in active addiction was complete isolation and degradation. And today I have so many people in my life, and I have so many connections that I continue to make. You know, I've found the members of my soul family. I know that these are the people that I signed up to come to Earth with in order to create this change that the collective is undergoing right now. And my life, you know, there really are no words for me to explain to you what kind of depraved animal I was on drugs, but it's not the person that's sitting here today. And if transformation is possible for me, it's literally possible for anyone. I cannot explain to you that this was not ever going to be part of my life or my picture. And I'm no more special than anyone else. We are all infinitely special, and we are all worthy of living a satisfying life. So thank you so much for letting me share this very vulnerable piece of myself with you. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you being so open with us and telling us your story, because there are many people out there that are still suffering. What are you feeling right now?
Yeah, I feel excitement. My spirit loves when we like get the story out. Like, yeah, you know, I mean, the feeling of success is still one that like it's still very unfamiliar to me. I mean, I see success in so many areas of my life, you know, for the contrast of my experience, you know, I went from being like a homeless meth head sex worker strung out on heroin to like literally living an abundant life today. You know, I have my own space. It's just mine, my name on the lease. I've never experienced that before in my life. I've been able to like reconnect with my sister. That was a very, you know, estranged relationship. And, you know, like as long as I just keep doing the next right thing and just keep putting, you know, my one foot in front of the other, it seems like the universe really does. It rewards me, you know, in these beautiful ways that I never thought were possible. And I see now how my thoughts really do shape my reality. My thoughts before were, I'm a drug addict, I'm a victim, I'm a sex worker, I'm impoverished. These were my thoughts. And so that was my reality. And today, I just switch my thoughts around, you know, even if I don't believe it at first, I just switch them around. And just by switching that thought, I create a new pathway in my mind and a new universe unfolds for me.
What are some of the thoughts you have now?
That I'm an abundant individual. And right now I'm trying to like live in the future, or like I'm trying to live in what I would like to manifest in my life. So I say that I'm a motivational speaker, I'm an author, I'm of service, I belong to lots of communities. Some of these things are true, and some of them are in the process of manifesting. But yeah, you know, my life is no longer thoughts of lack and loss and grief and sadness and suffering. You know, I know that my pain has a purpose, and if my pain has a purpose, then everyone else's does as well. It doesn't mean that I lack empathy. I just, you know, I know that it's for a purpose, if even if the other person can't see it yet.
So if we have a listener who's suffering right now, what would you advise them as a positive step that they could take?
Yeah. Well, for me, some of the positive steps that really worked in my life, and I can only talk about my own life, is that I got involved with community, because I don't have to suffer alone, you know? And I've found that in being around like-minded people, no matter what it is that you're dealing with, there's a community for you. You know what I mean? And so for me, you know, like I belong to 12-step fellowship because those are like-minded people, in the form of what I'm overcoming with my shadow and my addiction. And you know, like it's manifested in other ways as well. I developed a lot of really nasty stuff with eating disorders when I let go of drugs. You know, like I just needed to be comforted, it felt like, and I was just grabbing at whatever I could, whether it's codependency, another human being, a person obsession, or food, or binge watching TV, or mindlessly scrolling through the phone. You know, like there's some part of me that just does not want to feel, or when a particular feeling comes up, I want to distract from the feeling. So like feelings of boredom or loneliness, things like that come up. Or even when I feel successful and joy, like those feelings are still pretty unfamiliar to me. You know, I'm about 3.5 years into this process of, you know, the undoing and recovery. So yeah, you know, like my suggestion is to get on Google and find your people, you know, and trust that the universe will send you exactly where you're supposed to be. But there's a tribe waiting to help you heal.
I like that you said that, because that's how Lou found me, and that's how Lou found you, and that's how I ended up with you today. So I think, you know, you're talking about our society changing and ascending, and clearly technology has its negatives, but hopefully the benefits really outweigh those negatives, and using the resources that we have to find people that can help us no matter what we're suffering from. And it wasn't even that Lou was suffering that he found me. He was just curious about something that I had written. So you can reach out to people from suffering, but you can also reach out to people from curiosity, for amusement, all sorts of ways. I know some of my patients are finding all these Instagram motivators really powerful. Because, what you experienced, I think, a profound change by being in an inpatient setting and having somebody there with you all the time. And that's one of the things that technology allows, is it allows 24/7 access to self-help. I know if, it's the middle of the night and I can't sleep, that's okay. I just go on Google and I Google yoga nidra for sleep. And all of a sudden there's a tool there that wasn't there, 20 years ago. So I think your point is so valid, that people should not be frightened of these feelings. We all have feelings, and a lot of them are negative. But that there is help for them, and we can all alter not just our feelings, but our thoughts, and we can all learn to live in a way that is much more satisfying. And yours is a very dramatic example. And I hope people who are suffering as much can have dramatic examples too, but this can also help people who don't have dramatic suffering, but who are just trying to lean into living a more satisfying life. So you mentioned community. My belief is we're all part of humankind, and that it's in our name, and without connection and without kindness, we're not going to be able to feel our best or do our best. So it's so nice to hear that part of your recovery is service to others. Because in that service you gain too. I know the famous story about, the founder of AA got sober and then went out and was trying to talk to other, drunks about getting sober. And one day he came home and he said to his wife, I haven't been able to help anybody. And she said, yes, but you're still sober, aren't you? And he said, yes. So I'm going to go out and keep doing the same thing. Right. So when we help others, we help ourselves. And when we help ourselves, in turn, that's helping others. There's really no distinction. We talked to Colin Drake just yesterday about how this is all an illusion of separateness. And when we're in that state, we get confused. If we can recognize that we're all part of humankind, whatever that means to you, then being in service of others is in service of ourselves. And so your dream of abundance to continue to help more and more people is also in service of yourself. And it seems like you're doing a wonderful job of manifesting it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, for me, being of service, I know that that's where I'm meant to be, in whatever capacity I can. And being of service to others doesn't necessarily mean to me now what it meant to me before. Like when I first came into recovery and reprogramming, I thought like, I'm going to change the world. I need to figure out how I'm going to speak everywhere and share. And I realize now in my journey that sometimes my purpose is just to sit and listen and hold space for somebody else, I am a powerful testimony of transformation. I basically had to die and hit the lowest bottom of my life to get there. Other people don't need to do that. I wouldn't wish my bottom on anybody else. But I do know that people need just empathy and empathetic listening. And, that's what I do for work now. Basically, I just really hold space, like just the way that I look today versus what I looked like before, like I was sunken in and gray and my eyes were dead. And, my life was just, like it was just dirty. And
do you have a photo that you want to share with us? Because
I do. Yeah.
It's powerful, right?
It is very powerful.
After, and you look so beautiful now, and you look so young. It's hard to imagine that you had that many years of substance abuse.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, but I will tell you that the last year of my active addiction, I looked probably 15 years older than I look now. This is all just from the power of spirit. This is spirit coming alive in a person. I realized when I was going through heroin withdrawal, I kept getting this image of the phoenix rising from the ashes because it literally felt like my bones were on fire. And I thought, maybe, I realized later, maybe that was my spirit coming alive and finally sparking up and taking place inside of me, because like I said, spirituality was not part of my life before those experiences. And so, yeah, this is all thanks to just spirit coming alive and a Zoom filter and a ring light.
Touche. We have to use all our tools, right? Can't neglect any tools. Isn't that funny? Yeah. And how about your sister? Can you tell us more about how she's doing?
Yeah, this is a relationship that's only just beginning to mend itself. When I got clean and I came into recovery and reprogramming, I thought well, every relationship in my life is going to transform the same way that I did. But, you know, that's not how it works for everybody. And I have to respect that. And I don't know how, and I'm learning how. You know, I realize by working the 12 steps in my 12-step program that I have a lot of issues around control. I want things to be my way when I want them to be my way. And I have never been able to give that space to people. And so, yeah, my relationship with my sister has only just started to mend itself over the last couple of months. So I don't want to say too much because I'm like so scared that it'll go in another direction. But, you know, like this is a person that we experienced a very traumatic thing together. Not only was our childhood very traumatic, but this loss was just so devastating. And we reacted in such different ways. And it didn't make any sense to me how two people could live the same life, but experience it in two totally different ways. And thanks to my understanding now of what perception is, you know, I see that even though we grew up in the same space, we didn't experience things the same way. And I'm really grateful that she's like cracking the door open to this relationship. And I'm just going to take it one step at a time, one day at a time, and let it be on her terms, because I spent a lot of time, yeah, trying to ruin and wreck lots of aspects of my life, this one included.
But I think also the growth opportunity is there for you too, to not control, to recognize that control is an illusion. And by her showing up and you not going to your comfort spot of control is growth for you as well. So
Yes.
No matter what happens with the relationship, you're growing in the process of re-experiencing it.
Oh yeah, it feels like chewing glass. It's like so uncomfortable doing new things. You know, everything in my life is new. I'm seeing it through new eyes, through an awakened perspective. And, you know, there's lots of suggestions. Like they say, you know, like I just shared, like get involved in a community. Well, it really feels super awkward to get involved with a new group of people, especially as an adult, you know, an adult woman trying to make new friends. I would rather do anything else, you know, but the relationships that I have in my life today are, I mean, they're profound. I mean, like I've never had relationships like this before in my life, but it does feel awkward. And somebody told me that when you feel uncomfortable, it means that you're growing. And so if I constantly feel uncomfortable, I know that I'm I'm expanding into something bigger.
Absolutely. Have you had any other experiences like the ones that you described since then?
Those are my super big, profound ones. But I experience spiritual awakenings every day, you know, because of what I do for my career now and because of the communities that I'm involved in. I see beautiful synchronicities all around me, like these divine coincidences, and just being able to consciously manifest some things in my life. These are all just like moments of spiritual awakening. I haven't had any more white light moments in heaven, but I do have a conscious connection with a power greater than myself, angels, guides. And, you know, when I was first in treatment, I felt like I didn't have any language for anything that had happened. And so I just kept saying really weird things. And everybody was like, please stop talking. I was like, don't you know that we're all dead and that this is heaven? And, you know, like everybody was like, please, you're scaring us. Stop. And so most of my time was spent in communication with my guides, my spirit guides, my angels. And I had all of these really profound relationships with people that were not physically here. My father included, he's like my number one spirit guide. And, you know, I said out loud to them as I was leaving treatment, I said, it would be really great if you guys could manifest into physical people for me, because, you know, it feels very lonely. I mean, I love that I have this awareness, but I'm here to experience life with other people, and I need that. And I found all of my communities as soon as I left treatment. It was like the universe really heard my prayer and answered it. I saw the Surviving Death docuseries on Netflix. And in the first episode, it's about near-death experiences. And I heard Mary Neal share about her near-death experience. And I said, oh my goodness, that's what happened to me. And I saw that there was some sharing groups online for the International Association for Near-Death Studies, the IANS organization. And so I went to their sharing groups and I would just cry for the whole 90 minutes in the sharing group. And I would say, why did God reject me? Why did God reject you? What are we doing stuck here? And then as I heard other people share about their experiences and their integration process, I finally found serenity in my experience. I began volunteering for them. Now I work for them as the I do the webinar coordination for them, and I'm starting a podcast for them as well next month. And so
Beautiful.
my life has just transformed into this beautiful thing. And all I had to do was just set intention, and the universe sent me all my tools.
It's beautiful. Well, we intended to be motivated and inspired by you today, and I think we more than met our intention. It's a very, very compelling and interesting and deep, rich story. And I hope that, you know, our other intention is to help other people live a more satisfying life. And I think you and I are aligned in that intention. So I hope that we've accomplished that together here today. And I wish you all the best on your continued journey.
Thank you so much. So grateful for you in this space.